And so I got to a place where I just believed everyone that I loved would be better off without me because I had struggled off and on my entire life with depression. I didn't understand how to regulate any of that.
You face battles most never fought, pain, struggle, adversity. But here, we use that as fuel. This is the Battle Harder podcast, where we motivate, educate, and inspire warriors of life, veterans, survivors, leaders. We share stories and strategies to turn pain into progress. Here's your host, Coach Rob. Let's lock in and battle harder.
What is up, everybody? It's your host, Coach Rob, here on the Battle Harder podcast. And today we're sitting down with Melissa Hepner. Melissa is an LCSW. She's an author. She's the host of her own podcast called the Emotionally Unavailable Podcast. Her story is one of surviving from every form of abuse, growing up in a home that was shattered by addiction, and losing both parents far too young. We're going to get all this today. We're going to talk about burnout in adulthood and what is she doing now to be the best version that she can today. So, Melissa, I'd like to welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me here on the Battle Harder podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, and I love your intro.
Thank you. Is there anything you'd like to add to the mix of what I introduced you as who you are and what you do?
No, I think you summarized it really well.
Sounds good. So let's just go in the beginning. So in the beginning, like growing up, you as a kid, kind of give us a picture of what that was like.
My mom was young, and she had my older brother who's just 13 months older than me, and then my younger brother is 14 months younger than me. So little stair steps, born to somebody with zero coping skills and a lot of ability to try to do anything she could to escape. And she and my dad were in a very abusive relationship. We did a lot of back and forth between them and then her, and then with my grandparents, and then it was just my grandma because my grandpa ended up leaving. And lots of like leaving us in houses until my grandma discovered that she had left us again, things like that. Then when I was about 8, we became more permanently like in with my grandparents from 8 to about 11 when he left. But even when we didn't live with them, we still had lots of contact with them. But I don't know that we should have, but we did. And my mom was kind of like that typical mom was like, those are my babies. And so she really didn't care what she was on or how she was acting. She was going to show up. And then my dad was truly, my dad was more into opiates. So he was a little more chill, and when whatever he was on, he wasn't like usually creating violence. A lot of the violence that had occurred between the two of them was when he was also drinking, and also because I would never blame a victim, but my mother was physically violent and brought out the absolute worst in him. And so they were very violent together, but he wasn't really like that before or after her. And I never saw him behave that way again. I do think the reduction of alcohol in his diet helped, but I think they just had a very toxic dynamic. But we still saw him fairly regularly. But he was like covered in his shame. And so he would, if he didn't have money to show up for your birthday, he just didn't show up because he believed that, that's what kids really cared about was whatever gifts he could bring. But I was the golden child of our family. So like I was the people pleaser, just, I'm going to achieve, very motivated by spite too, because my grandma was pretty narcissistic, and as were all of the rest of her children, including my mom. But, they would just like say really cruel stuff. So we had not just the abuse that we experienced or addicts as parents, we had a lot of familial strife because we lived with my grandma and her other children would come over like all the time, and they didn't like my mom. They didn't like us, so it was just a lot of layers of the tragedy. You know what I mean?
So, growing up in the household like this, I mean, do you have fond memories? Like, did your parents teach you how to ride a bike, or like what was like the things that most kids get to enjoy as life? How is that different from you being kind of in this crazy situation and being bounced around between everybody, so to speak?
That's a great question. I have a seed in my teeth. I'm sorry. Okay, so they had periods of sobriety. And I think that was probably the most heartbreaking part of all of it, is because the periods didn't last very long, but the hope that a child can have can be very big and very tragic whenever that hope comes crashing down. So like when I was in 5th grade, my mom had a period of sobriety, and this one jacket was really popular. It was kind of like a letter jacket, but it was like an old varsity looking jacket, and it said Moore, because we were from Moore, Oklahoma, and it said Moore in the back, and then you put your like first or last name on the front. I don't remember, but they were very cool, very chic. It was the thing. And she worked really hard. She had a job at the time and worked really, really hard, sacrificed, because God knows she told us all about sacrifice, but and got us those things for Christmas, my brother and I. And then she got our little brother like some Ninja Turtle thing that he really wanted. So we would have periods like that. And like for 3rd grade, when I turned 8, I remember getting a sleepover with my dad and him getting me this really cool boom box. And like, you know what a boom box is, but probably younger people don't. But like, we had moments like that. My dad was kind of a lecturer. He was desperate for us to not be like him. So he was very much like, and it was like he had some sixth sense that he wouldn't be around long, because he was always like, and he'd say that. He'd say like, but he also knew he was an addict, and you never know when your last time's going to be. But he would be like encouraging us to read the glossary in the Reader's Digest. Like, you got to have a good vocabulary, knowledge is power, blah, blah, blah. So we had like a few fun memories, but he was also an idiot. And so like, it was just really kind of a grab bag on which dad was going to show up. Like, I want to ride motorcycles with my children, and then wreck the motorcycle, like things like that.
Wow.
You just kind of never knew what you were going to get with him or her, because it really, if she was on anything, she was very, very violent. And even if it was just like emotional abuse, I shouldn't have said just, even if it lacked physical abuse, she was screaming in your face to the point where you're terrified, like it was really bad. So that really overshadows most of any of the good stuff that we did experience. But I don't remember any real normalcy. I do think probably the man that I called stepdad for years is who taught me how to ride a bike. And, so we did have little periods, whenever they could get it together for 5 minutes, we'd have a 5 minutes of calm. Because with my grandma, it was like, you always just knew she was doing it out of obligation. I mean, she loved us, and I believe that, and I felt that, but she didn't want us, and I don't blame her, but she didn't. And it wasn't a sacrifice she necessarily should have made, because I mean, she didn't want to do it, So you just always got the sense that everything about you was just too much for her,
I think that is probably fair to say for a lot of parents in this situation. We hear all the time about grandparents having to take over a child's life, and I could kind of understand and empathize with her, because I kind of feel that like you've lived all this life and you're supposed to chill out, and now you have a whole nother family you have to take care of, because
100%.
your kids, I don't want to say failures, but they kind of just like gave up or whatever. And so like you said, that whole obligation of, I don't want to do this, but I have to, what choice do I have?
What
So
choice?
with
Exactly.
that going on in your life, with that in your life, like going into your teenage years, and like, how did that start with like your mental health and forming relationships? Because you saw like one side of things, so to speak.
That is, man, you're good at the questions. Okay, so I think I always really leaned into that anxious attachment, begging people to love me, to see me, to acknowledge my existence. And I think the deepest wound there really was trying to find any way to feel special or chosen, because I'm also the middle child, so that comes with its own set of stuff. But I think I was very unsure for most of until adolescence, just didn't really have any sort of real identity to where I would just do whatever. I mean, I had a pretty strong moral compass, and so that really, you know, kept me as grounded as I could be in a world where I was just trying to fit in any way possible. So I knew I wasn't going to go do drugs or drink, or, I had a girl in 5th grade that smoked cigarettes on our playground.
Oh, wow.
That wasn't going to be me, but anything less than that, maybe I would do. I didn't really get in a lot of trouble because I was a golden child, but I think I had trouble connecting with other people too. I mean, in hindsight, I would say that started at a very young age, just from the rejections that you receive from your peers in general. And I was weird. I mean, I just did weird stuff because I wasn't really around anyone normal outside of school. And I was nerdy, and I lied a lot. I would just lie to try to fit in. It was so my first book that I wrote, called Owning My Crazy, the whole first chapter is all this stupid stuff I did in elementary school. Probably not even all of it, but a lot of it. And I when I look back, I'm like, oh, that's so cringe. But that's kind of who I was just trying desperately to get somebody to just have some companionship with, because I think there was that theme of isolated and lonely most of the time. And then heading into teenage years, after my dad died, honestly, I got this real sobering sense of you guys don't have a single clue about what really matters here. People just die, and especially because overdoses are so tragic and they're so fast. And he was 38 years old. He had just turned 38 10 days
wow.
before his birthday was February 4th, and then he died on Valentine's Day in a bathroom of a Dairy Queen, making a pit stop because he was supposed to be going to my younger sisters that he had with somebody Valentine's party. So you just one day you don't have a dad anymore because they died in a Dairy Queen bathroom. And so I think that really rocked me to my core. And I mean, obviously it would, but I remember just really being in a who's next, okay, so everyone's going to die eventually. And I kind of believed it, that I would be the one to watch everyone die. So I was okay, which one of me? And so already in a very a very unsolid foundation, a very shaky foundation, became more rocky because I just didn't feel secure in my environment. It was what you do have is little and it will be ripped away from you. So I think that impacted my relationships again with that anxious attachment. Just constantly, any sort of space was a total disconnect for me and just totally freaked me out.
And so after that, was it before that or not too much after that you lost your mother too?
It was about 7 years because he died in 96 and she died in 2002. So I was still young. I was 22. I was married and pregnant with my first child. Very sudden, but we did at least get 3 weeks in the hospital with her because she had complications related to hepatitis C and cirrhosis. And so for anyone listening, if you've ever had someone experience esophageal varices, that's what she had. And it's a really ugly way to go, but she had been incarcerated as well for a couple of years at that point. And so
Oh, wow.
I really am so grateful for that time because she was calm, cool, collected. We really worked every single bug that you could have between us out. And I got a real sense of closure when she died. There was nothing left unsaid. Whereas with my dad, that had been just so much a part of the weight of grief. I mean, obviously there's so much unfinished business when your dad dies before he's 40 and you're 15 years old, but it was different with her because I had been able to show up for her. We had loved each other really unconditionally in those 2 years, and she was safe and I knew where she was.
Yeah. And I think it's harder sometimes because even, my mom passed in 2018. And unfortunately, I didn't even get to say goodbye to her. And it's not the fact that she passed over these years. It's just that not being able to say I love you or I'll see you
Mm-hmm.
later or whatever. And it took a long time as part of my trauma to deal with that, because I remember my mom had gone in the hospital. I live in South Florida, in Fort Lauderdale, and my parents at the time, they lived in Tampa. And my mom had went to the hospital. She was having some issues with her liver and some other things. And like I call her at the hospital and like, yeah, I'm okay, maybe a couple more days. And the last thing I remember is I texted mom, I heard from you, are you okay? Well, later that night she would pass. And my dad would call me and basically have a breakdown and say, your mom is gone. And for a very, very long time, I want to say at least for 2 years, if not 3 years, I would refuse to delete that text from my
Oh,
mom,
yeah.
because that was literally like the last thing that I had, the last
Mm-hmm.
communication, the last message. Even though she didn't answer it, I know she got that message. And after a while of healing and dealing with all my other trauma and the stuff that I've been through, I deleted that and have gotten over that. But I truly understand about losing a parent suddenly. For you, it
Mm-hmm.
sucks because you were a lot younger. And it sucks when a parent's already kind of not in your life and then they just kind of disappear from the earth altogether. So with everything that happened, and you said you were married with already one kid, correct?
I was pregnant. Mm-hmm.
So what was, because you have a lot of stuff, I guess, that happened in your life beyond this that kind of led you to having some very deep, dark thoughts and stuff. What was that like? What was going through your head at this time when all this stuff was going on? What were you doing with your life at the time, and kind of what happened that would begin the shift of who you are now?
Well, I think ultimately what happened is all of the stuff in childhood impacted me far more than I was aware of, because
Mm,
nobody taught us, nobody knew about trauma, right? And so at like 19, I'm like, yeah, I just don't think my childhood really affected me that much, because to me, and the way I feel like all of us were programmed to believe, you if you weren't like, I wasn't out there hooking, I wasn't doing drugs, I wasn't like abusing substances, like I drank and whatever, but like nothing crazy. I was a smoker, but I just wasn't doing things the way my brothers were, who were very much in the throes of addiction. And even, in our teen years, running away from home, creating conflict, inpatient hospitalizations, boot camps for bad kids, all of those traumas really racked up too. And then plus kind of the toxic nature of the relationship between my grandma and me. So there was all of that. And I'm going into an adulthood where I'm insecure, jealous, paranoid. What I know now is that I was so afraid of vulnerability and letting people in. I mean, I didn't realize I wasn't letting people in, but I wasn't. And I would much rather start a fight than to address like this feeling of rejection or betrayal or neglect or whatever's coming up. I could ruminate and just have a little thought spiral and then start a fight and release anger. And really, the biggest byproduct of all that trauma for me, along with the inability to be vulnerable and just that protective nature, my reactivity. I just was so reactive to where like I was triggered every minute of every day. And in public, I would just like freeze or fawn, like, okay, and then just take every ounce of it out on my family. So I was like a screamer. Repeating patterns like that where I'm just like, cussing my family out. I mean, nothing to the extent that my mom did, but I mean, I recognized us in each other at that stage, and the shame that I was just filled with because of that. Then as I got older with less and less ability to grasp onto any sort of coping, because I hadn't really learned any. I mean, even when I did learn about trauma, I learned a lot about, regulating your nervous system and stuff, but you really can't do that if you don't understand what's causing the dysregulation to begin with. And that's where I got stuck, was trying really hard to understand why I was feeling the way I was, which ultimately was just that my family would be better off without me because I was so reactive. And my grandma, I had been like this my whole life. My grandma really did this thing where she would, she made lots of comparisons between my brothers and me, but especially with my younger brother, if I expressed any sort of discontent about the things that he was doing to mess up his life, she would say things like, I don't know why you're so jealous of him. And, like his heart is so much better than yours. And he's a good person. You're not a good person. Things like that. Like, and I want more than anything on the entire earth to be a good person. So like, those were the most crushing things that she could have possibly said to me. So I really carried so much shame about this reactivity, and I labeled myself as mean. I'm just mean, and I've given this the old college try, and nothing I'm doing is ever giving me any sustained like success. And so I got to a place where I just believed everyone that I loved would be better off without me, because I had struggled off and on my entire life with depression. I didn't understand how to regulate any of that. I mean, now I can experience what I'll just call a chemical low. I won't even label it depression. I'm just maybe a little depleted on chemicals because I do interviews like this and I get a lot of really good chemicals from them because I'm energized and lit up by stuff like this. But what goes up must come down. So when I get to the low portion, I know how to deal with that now. And I recognize, oh, that's a chemical depletion. I need to eat and rest and whatever. Before, oh, I'm depressed. And I didn't know how to control my thoughts at all. And they just lived there, just constantly telling me what a bad person I was. So that's how I reached profound darkness. And that is why I wanted to die, because I didn't think that there was any way for me to get better.
Man, that's a lot to unpack. I really like what you said about everything. I think unfortunately what kind of sucks is, and maybe it's changing now, or maybe it's not for our era, or at least for me, I'm 47 now. We weren't taught, like you said, about what is maybe depression or anxiety or PTSD, because our parents didn't even know what it was. They just had hard things and they just sucked it up and did what they had to do to
Right.
keep going, regardless if it bothered them or not. And we're seeing that things change. And I'd like to think that almost anybody that has some form of trauma, whether childhood trauma or emotional trauma or whatever, you're right, we never recognize it because people even today will still dance around eggshells. And you might say, oh, I'm not feeling well. Oh, you're fine, there's nothing wrong with you, like stop acting crazy or stop acting weird. And trying to break that stigma, especially we found with COVID, of all crazy things, that people had more and more mental health. And I never thought about this until I had another young lady on. And I always thought, I'm like, why did people freak out during COVID? Like, what's the excuse to have a mental breakdown during COVID? And when she told her story, she was actually in an abusive relationship right during the middle of COVID. So you're locked down with a person that you don't want to be with, and you have nowhere to go, and you have to be with this person. You don't have a choice. And I was like, holy crap, like how many more people during COVID went through this where they were abused physically, mentally, emotionally, maybe even sexually, and that it created more havoc, more problems, more chaos. And it took me a long time too to learn emotional regulations. And like you said, lows. And maybe you can attest to this. I tell people all the time, like, when I tell you I can help you from your trauma or help you heal, that's not giving you a cure-all. I'm not getting rid of the symptoms, because I can't get rid of the symptoms. I don't even think an actual psychologist or psychiatrist can get rid of the symptoms, but I can help you manage them effectively and learn to regulate your emotions and learn your triggers and what upsets you and what makes you tick, so you can have more good days than bad. And that's what it's about,
have
right?
Freedom from them, I think. Like, I tell my clients that too. Like, what we're doing now is building a toolbox, and you're always going to need the toolbox. You may not have to access the tools in there nearly as often as you do right now, but you're always going to have the toolbox, because like everybody goes through what they go through in this life. I mean, whether you've got the level of trauma that you and I have received, or you had a childhood that you would classify as normal and great parents and whatever, none of our parents had the skills or the information to walk us through really important emotional developmental milestones. So even if no one ever laid a hand on you, even if from the outside they were so supportive, I know for a fact it also came with a lot of criticism, a lot of shame, there was a lot of verbal abuse that people don't label as verbal abuse. So like I'll put it like this, we all have our cross to bear, right? We've all got something, whether it's this level of CPTSD or not, we've all got something. And so, yeah, we have to create this toolbox, but I don't feel imprisoned by any of that anymore. I feel for the first time in my life over this time period, I'm in control. Where I had this brain that I felt very out of control of. Like, I remember being like, no, I mean, this is just kind of who I am, and trying to accept it. But like, how do you accept that you're just like screaming at people all the time? Now, I will also say part of what I've come to understand, and this is more of, my spirituality, but is that sometimes I still scream, like, and sometimes don't respond correctly to one of my children, but it doesn't come with that flood of shame and disappointment and all. It's like, I understand humanity for what it is now, and that, yeah, sometimes I'm going to make mistakes, but I don't have to hate myself for every ounce of it,
Yeah, I like that. And I know I very rarely have bad days, but I still have bad days. And the emotional regulation is so important that when you go back to the old you, and I was a yeller and screamer too, and actually was married for 18 years in my first marriage, and I always tell everybody and on multiple podcasts, I'll take 60% of blame. Now, all it takes two for a marriage to work, and things to be happy and lovely, 60% was my mental health issues, my yelling, my screaming, my being angry, not at my ex-wife, but at myself, and not knowing why, and why did I internalize everything, and why did everything bother me. And sometimes I still do internalize things. Sometimes I do raise my voice, but it's not at, like you said, the level of what it used to be, where it maybe was a scale from 1 to 10. You're talking about it's at a 12. Well, maybe I'm at a 2 or a 3.
Right, exactly. And we're
Every
stopping
so
faster.
often.
We're like, oh, my bad,
Right.
my bad. And we repair. We know how to repair after those things happen, because we don't have to run and hide in shame. We feel the appropriate amount of remorse and we act. We don't go shame ourselves to death over it.
So what kind of like was the last straw, or what was that turning point in your life where you said, I can't operate like this anymore? And what did you do to start to see that shift or that change?
That point was October of 23, when I made a decision that I just needed to go ahead and die, because I was hopeless and helpless, and nothing was going to change. Family's better off without me. But because I set a date that was kind of far off in the future, because whenever I was like looking in my calendar, I was like, oh, that's 2 weeks from my oldest child's birthday. I don't want to do that, which is also right before Thanksgiving, and then Christmas, and then And I was like, well, I can't be that guy, So I put it off. And then because I put it off, it gave me a little more time to be like, okay, well, we're going to make it to that date, but we're going to have to get some stuff figured out. Because at that point, I couldn't even make it through like 10 minutes without just like constantly thinking about how I was going to do it. Should I not? And then once I made the decision, that brought a lot of relief, because I wasn't wondering or guessing or whatever. It was just like, oh yeah, no, okay, we're going to go ahead and do it. But because I was trying to make it from October to August, I kind of was like, okay, well, we gotta start changing some stuff. And truly, in the beginning, it was literally just trying to like keep my brain occupied, so that I didn't spend so much time in deep thought about what a horrible person I was and how much I just needed to die. So I started to get creative, and I opened a little Shopify store that just makes zero money, but I still have it because I have fun with it. And I created like some little Zodiac t-shirts and some cups and things. So I started to find a creative outlet, and I could get into like a flow state for like 2 hours. And that's 2 hours that I wasn't like thinking about something really heavy. And I just kind of did things like that. I started protecting my peace just a little bit more. I got a little more isolated because the people that were around me were mostly work friends, and we were in a really toxic work environment. And, up to that point, I really didn't know how to connect with people authentically. I connected with people from talking shit and complaining, and that was kind of it, or let me be your sounding board and me sit here and be your hero, fix it girl. And so that was really how I had positioned myself in people's lives. And I just decided, like, I'm going to get really real about my struggles. And so I just kind of started saying it out loud, and that was really helpful. It was those first early months of trying to get better were still very real and raw, and just looked like a lot of crying because I was trying to be available to the emotions, but didn't have a single clue what to do with them. And then I just decided, okay, I'm going to quit this toxic job that is literally killing me, because it was my fault, because I wasn't getting the external validation that I had grown accustomed to through my whole life to get my value and worth from. So I didn't know how to get those things for myself, to feel valued, to feel worthy, to feel any sort of love for myself. Consciously, I would have said, oh yeah, I love myself. Boy, I uncovered a lot of self-hatred, a lot. And it really was a very slow moving process at first. It was just like practicing those regulation tips, all of that. And then I started my podcast, and one of my early guests taught me about a book called the Finding Peace Workbook. And that book changed my life because it broke shame down into different archetypes. And when I understood that, I understood what all this noise in my brain was. And it was just a bunch of shame narratives. And it came in different forms, to the point where I was like, I think I might be schizophrenic, because this seems very much like voices in my head. Even though it sounded like me, the book really teaches you how to externalize that narrative and see, like, it's not you talking to yourself. This is just old narratives that you were programmed to believe about yourself. And so as I started to understand that, I learned how to quiet them. And now, I know how to control my brain to a degree that I have never had in my entire life. But now I just know, yeah, and I get more curious about why, because I'm a woman, so we have a lot of hormonal fluctuations that will cause some overthinking at any given moment. But when that happens, I don't entertain it. I get curious about it. Wonder why that particular thing is coming up again, because it's not like I'm living this perfect existence now that I've healed. But I understand that I was the one assigning all of the meaning to all of it. And so I quit that job. I started my podcast. I met a lot of really good people that I've been very fortunate to come across, and just got a lot of different healing modalities, had a spiritual awakening in those early days of healing, which was also very helpful, I feel. And I kind of just took it day by day. And it wasn't until I reached that point of oh, okay, the point is to learn to love yourself in spite of all of this, and to understand that nothing external of me changes my worth and value as a human, and that I am great exactly how I am. And I don't anymore say I'm healing. I feel like I have healed, but I will always continue growing and evolving. And that's my goal, is just to continue to grow and evolve.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think for people that want to live a purposeful life, that's what it's about. You have to try to be 1% better every day, and you have to have a growth mindset. And I find myself saying this on every single podcast. You have to have a limitless belief system, not a limiting belief system. And sometimes that's hard. So when you started to face the darkness, so to speak, and you started talking about your issues that you had, how did that make you feel? I mean, was that oh shit, I feel better? And did it seem like all of a sudden, maybe you should have done this sooner? Because I know for me, operating in the black, all the time, all the time, the most negative person in the world, to the point that I might as well have been Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh with the dark cloud over my head all day, every day. As soon as I learned to heal, I was like, oh shit, why didn't I do this sooner? And I realized with people, that fear, it's weird because, that fear, if I have a fear of asking somebody out, that's a genuine fear of rejection. but that fear of going into that dark, deep psyche, that persona, that whirlwind, whatever you want to call it, of that thing you're facing, you realize that once you get in there, you're like, man, this isn't so bad. Like, it's
Right.
actually, it's okay. So
Actually, all the things I did to try to avoid this were much more painful than this is. That's what I really discovered. And I mean, so many discoveries, obviously, but yeah, I really I've seen it be a very common experience, and I experienced this as well, that when you do heal, the remorse that you feel for not having this information sooner, and like the years, quote unquote, wasted, you know, in that dark cloud. Or for me, I always said I was in the red. Like, I was in the red from the time I woke up to the time I went to sleep, just pissed at everyone. So in terms of talking about it, I would say at first that wasn't necessarily very helpful, because I had surrounded myself with people who were in my life to need me, and to never like me need them, because I realized, like, oh, I was trying to protect myself from everyone. I didn't want anyone to see me. Even though I craved desperately to feel seen, I hid behind every freaking mask that you possibly could. And so that was a process of unlearning a lot of things, and just realizing it's safe to share. And I think even still, if I were to say one struggle, it would be that vulnerability piece of telling people I'm struggling in real time. I don't have the same struggles that I used to have, but like, you know, I do have real life stress and pressures. And so like talking about that without any level of shame can be tricky for me. I do it because I know I have to. But I think what really shifted in those days was my understanding of why I had surrounded myself with the people that I had, how I had shown up for them, and had really self-abandoned so much, and just asked them to abandon me, really. And then just got to a place where I understood that so much of what I was hurting over was just my perception of things. And like, I used to feel like I loved everyone more than they loved me. And I couldn't receive love from anyone because I could not feel that for myself. Like, if somebody said nice things about me, it was so wildly uncomfortable, because I didn't know how to accept nice things being said, even though I needed it and I did crave the validation. Once I'd receive it, it was a double-edged sword. It only felt good for like a second, and then it felt bad for a lot longer. And then it'd be like, well, I guess in reflection that was good. I just really struggled with relationships in general, because I did not like myself at all. Again, I would have said something different. If you had asked me, I'd have been like, oh, I like myself, I'm great. But I liked the things that I could accomplish. And I think, you know, I used to take so much pride in feeling like I was a strong person or a resilient person. And I think when things really shifted is when I was like, yeah, I don't want to be those things anymore. Like, yeah, I'm strong, and I am. I would still say that. But I want to be soft, and I want to be held, and I want someone to like help me. And instead of like, I don't need anyone, like just really getting that self-acceptance of like, no, I need a lot right now, actually, and asking for it and allowing it to come in, because I would block all that stuff before just out of self-preservation. Didn't realize it, obviously. This is all stuff you uncover when you're working through it. But, you know, I think everything shifted when I started to love myself, honestly.
yeah, I mean, that's the biggest key. And you know, if you don't love yourself, you can't love anybody else. If you don't love yourself, you can't be a better husband, a better wife, a better partner, better whatever. And I had a lot of hatred for myself, who I was. And like you said, it kind of sucks, like when you have mental health issues and you're angry or upset or depressed, and you don't know why. Like, it just, like you said, you're kind of in that, oh, I guess this is my life now. That whole dumpster fire meme, dumpster being on fire, and you're like, I'm fine, when in reality your whole world's crumbling before you. And it took a lot of inner searching for me to like really, like, why am I really angry? Like, is the things I'm getting mad at worth getting mad at? And I used to be the guy that, you know, if you cut me off, I was chasing you down, I was flipping you off, I was yelling and screaming at you.
Yeah.
If you got in my personal space, I might say something rude, I might shoulder check you. You know, if you messed up my order, I was yelling at the waitress. Like, all this non-necessary emotional strain because I wasn't happy with myself and I wasn't happy on the inside. And I've told this story a couple times on other episodes, but the I guess the aha moment with that, with the emotional regulation, is when I got with my current wife. We've been married for a year now, but we've been together for 8 years. When I first got with her, I was supposed to go to my parents' house in Tampa for Christmas, and I left my wallet in a Publix. And what old Rob did is I yelled and screamed. I threw stuff. I think I put my hand through a wall over a wallet being at Publix. And what happened is Publix called me. They had my wallet. I got it back. Everything was fine. But that put a real red flag on my wife's, like, oh shit, like, I know he said he was a veteran. I know he said he had PTSD, but like, it's just a wallet and he's freaking out. Like, can I handle this? And thank God she stuck with me, because it's been a while now, but Cheesecake is one of our date night favorite restaurants. I love cheesecake with a passion. It's down the street from my house. It doesn't take long to get there. So we go to Cheesecake. We have a beautiful dinner. I leave my wallet in the restaurant, and we get home, and, you know, I'm looking for my wallet. I'm pulling out my pockets, and I was like, what's wrong? I said, I think I lost my wallet. And I said it calm. I was like, I think I lost my wallet. And old Rob like yelling and screaming at level 20 already.
Oh God, I resonate so hard with that.
But here's the funny thing. She starts freaking out, right? She's turning into me. She's like, oh my God, what are you going to do? Credit cards. I'm like, look, it's not a big deal. And like, her jaw hits the floor. I'm like, it's probably still at the restaurant. I'll just call them and see. And if it is, I'll go get it. And if not, it's just stuff. Like, I didn't have wads of cash in there, you know, credit cards, everything can be replaced. Yeah. Is it inconvenience? Yes. Does it suck? Yes. Does it really hinder my life from me doing anything? No.
No.
So
and is it worth the energy expended if you go there?
And that's that exactly. You have to learn what you're going to put your energy in. I had the choice at that point to put my energy into draining myself, yelling, screaming, trying to deal with something that essentially just was an accident, out of my control. Oh, well, dum-dum, pay attention next time. Like, don't freak out. Or put my energy into things like doing this podcast and having conversations with you and trying to help people and being a better husband, better father. And it took a lot of work and time, and I'm still not perfect at it, but that energy shift is huge. You have to control the things you can and not worry about the things you can't, and kind of navigate what you can everywhere in the middle to the best of your ability.
Oh yeah. I started with like, okay, I found peace. Peace is now my currency. How much of my peace am I willing to spend on this stupid incident? I had to really stop, because I always wanted to be that person. But the way I was talking to myself before was, Melissa, you know better, and just shaming myself, which helps nobody. I didn't have an actual tool. So I think that's an important distinction to make, is you cannot rely on the finite amount of self-control and discipline that we are given in a 24-hour period to make those decisions. It has to be working through the tools. It has to take practice. You don't give up because the first time you try to tell yourself, this isn't worth my peace, you're still, flipping to level red. That's okay. Like, that's going to happen the first few times you're practicing these tools. But if you continue to go, you're going to rewire your brain to go there naturally. Not to say we're going to be perfect ever. And I think that's another huge distinction that we've both hit on a couple of times. But you're never going to be perfect at any of this. But you're going to get so much further along by using these tools, not relying on self-control and discipline, practicing them, and getting to the heart of the matter. You have to figure out why you became this person to begin with. Like, you don't have to go to therapy. It helps, but there are a lot of things out there ready, waiting, willing to help you discover why I was this person and how I can control my responses to my environment. Because, like, I wasn't necessarily like a check you in public or anything like that. Now, in my car, road rage to the max, but I was scared of people. So, like, I was like, oh, well, they can't see me cussing them. So, I'd have to like not look at them or anything like that. But inside, constant rage. And like, the stupid, like, I did have one incident where I scared my daughter. This was like at the tail end of just everything. I scared her because I was screaming in the car and driving like a lunatic. And that was a wake up too. Like, obviously the shame and everything that I felt about it was like, and this is why we got to die. But looking back, I learned things like, I can't be in a hurry because of the way my brain was originally wired, because my neglect started in infancy. I was in the hospital related to neglect by 2 months. So the way my brain has been wired my entire life leads me to be this certain way if I'm not, really on top of things. If I'm in a hurry, I'm going to flip over into survival mode really fast. So like, something I used to do as like a little tip for ADHD is set a timer and work against the timer. I can't do that because I'm going to get escalated and a lid flips somewhere in there. And then now I'm pissed and it just happens. I know that about myself now. I cannot be in a hurry. So I learned being late is okay. I'm not trying to be late. And if somebody else perceives that as me disrespecting their time, that is on them, because I know that's not my intention. My intention is to get somewhere safe and sound and to not put myself in a place of survival mode because I'm worried someone's going to feel a certain way. I don't care anymore because I know who I am and what my intentions are. My stuff's about me. Their stuff's about them. But again, I had to learn that about myself. Like, not everybody, some people can be in a hurry and not become a psycho, I guess. But, I can't. So I don't do it, And so I think that's, the really important distinction is you have to uncover why you have been behaving the way that you have, and then get the tools necessary to behave in a different way. You do not need to become a whole brand new you. You just got to unlearn some stuff, unbe some stuff, and really let that really good part of you shine. But we can't have light without dark. So like, you're going to have those parts of you that before maybe they were unlovable, but when you can learn how to love those and let them work for you instead of against you, that's the key right there.
I love that. And speaking of tools, so what's some of the tools, what's things that you kept you grounded, and what's some of the most common things you're seeing that you're using to help some of the people that you help heal?
So I developed a framework of quiet the noise, connect to self, embody the light, because the first thing is we intellectualize our experience. We don't know how to have feelings. Like, we think that saying like, well, I feel is experiencing a feeling. It's not. So much of this work is done with you and you alone, because you have to learn what's happening inside of your brain whenever it's happening. We're so quick to just analyze the situation instead of being like, oh, I feel a little rejected, and it's such a quick shift. Feelings pass within 90 seconds if you're not feeding it with a bunch of thoughts. So I see all of us having a lot of trouble controlling our thoughts, controlling the narratives. We're very quick to jump there and fight with someone in our head instead of just experiencing the feeling. So quieting the noise is about getting rid of that shame, getting rid of all that, guilt and all of the things that we've told ourselves we need to do to become, a completely different human being. And then we'll be worthy of love and belonging. But learning how to actually feel, getting out of your brain and into your heart, which, I realize sounds a little cringe if you're not used to that language, but like, that's the truth. I was in my brain all of the time. I was not in my body. I recognize when that separation happened as a protective factor in childhood. And then I felt it the first time I came home to it. I was in my car doing a little thing because I just had a little road rage, because I had gotten upset about something. And in thinking about that, then the road is pissing me off. And then I was like, oh, my neck, shoulders, and back hurt. That's my clue that I'm overthinking, because I was so accustomed to this, I didn't even recognize it when it was happening. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm really tense. That's right. I have a checklist that I now go through. So I was like, okay, I'm overthinking. Okay, what was I thinking about? Oh, yeah. Okay, so then get out of your head into your heart. What was the feeling? I remember how it felt to sink down out of my brain and actually be in my body. And I was like, oh, it was a little rejection. Cried for like, I don't know, 30 seconds. I mean, it was like no big deal. It was just like, oh yeah, that felt really like rejection. Okay, great. Then I released the energy and then I moved on. So that's really the biggest key, is being able to get out of your head into your heart, learn how to recognize what the feelings are, why they come up, take responsibility for them, understand that like you're seeing the world through your wounds, and a lot of time we're victimizing ourselves in a way that is really unnecessary, when we can just get curious about why the feeling is there. And that's really that part of connecting to yourself, is just being very curious about why you respond the way you do, and understanding not everybody would. Doesn't make you bad, doesn't make you anything other than a human. And you just have to look at things from other perspectives. But to be able to do that, you have to understand why you do what you do. So really just getting that connection to self. And then I would say embodying the light is really about integrating. Practice these tools, use them in your everyday life, and it all does, you get to rewire your brain. I mean, we have such beautiful capacity for change, because our brain says, oh, we can just build a new highway right over that old one, that'll be all right. And I think that's the important part, is so many of us, and I know I was really stuck in this trap before, we can listen to these podcasts and we can read any book we want, but in terms of like taking those steps, we don't always know what to do. And so I think, like conversations like this, you get actionable takeaways. You're hearing what we're saying, do it. Start practicing. You don't have to be good at it. So many of us don't start things because we don't want to get our hopes up again. We don't want to feel that betrayal or be faced with this, I'm not enough to sustain change. Start. I promise you're going to get a lot closer starting than you are just like continuing to sit exactly where you are. So I would say those are the big things I see.
Yeah, I mean, people don't realize. I think a lot of times part of the problem is that instant gratification. We live in a world where everything is so now, 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 give it to me now. And anything worth doing, like literally anything worth doing, takes time, and healing's included. And you just have to take those baby steps. Really is a marathon, not a sprint, and you just have to be 1% better every day. And I like what you said about feeling the tense in your muscles and stuff. And you're right. Even for me at first, like I would just go, my wife would think that I was possessed or something, because I would just become this different person.
Mm-hmm.
And when the dust has settled, sometimes like it was scary because I didn't even realize what I did or what happened. And then, you tell your wife, I didn't talk to you that way, or I didn't say that, but you damn well did.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the tools I created is called the emotional trigger tracker. And the reason why I created this is because everything is based on emotions. And even now for me, if someone cuts me off, I have to, before I flip out, I have to take that deep breath and be like, I'm okay. Like, I'm fine. This isn't worth it. And just recognizing those thought patterns, like you said, that muscle testing up. Oh, okay, I'm not okay. I'm tensed up. What's really going on? Opposed to just flipping out first. And then the next thing that you said, as far as doing anything, like anything in life, you have to take action. If you want to heal, you have to take action. If you want a new job, you have to take action. If you want to get in shape, you have to take action. You can't literally do anything without the act of taking that first leap and that first step off into that unknown, even though, the unknown is very scary. And I'm glad we have conversations like this podcast. My whole reason for this podcast is so people can heal and find the guests I have on that they relate with and can reach out to them. So give us a little background about what the Emotionally Unavailable Podcast is, and how people can listen to that if they'd like to hear more on your things that you talk about.
Well, Emotionally Unavailable was born because I wanted to talk, and because I just recognized that that's what we all are until we heal. Like, none of us are not emotionally unavailable because we don't know how to experience feelings correctly. We don't even see the patterns that we've repeated a million times until you start digging into it. So that was originally how it started, and then it kind of transformed over time, because at first I was kind of afraid to get too serious. I was still hiding so much of myself. I really like evolved throughout, like just really leaning into authenticity. And I certainly felt authentic in the beginning. I didn't feel like I was hiding, but I was still hiding certain parts of my personality. I mean, I was cussing a lot already, but other than that, I was just still trying to like, well, I don't want to, turn people away by doing, being too serious. But then I started realizing like your people can't find you if you're not being you. So, I just put it all out there. But now I mostly just talk to people who either have gone through this themselves and what they did. It's basically people who have gone through darkness, found the light, and are now sharing that light with others in a lot of different ways. Like, it's basically the same as you. And so, but it really, I think, ultimately still centers around my journey. Like, I wouldn't call it a healing journey anymore, but like my humanity, what my purpose on this earth is, things like that. But I get to meet a lot of really cool people and learn a lot myself. But that's the cool thing about being the host is like, if somebody comes on who's got some really good information, I'm like, listen, me and my husband got into a fight yesterday. So go ahead and give me some free therapy. Like there's like, if I have a relationship coach on, I'll do that. Or like if, today I got to meet somebody who, was diagnosed with schizophrenia 50 years ago. And I cried the entire interview because I have a brother with schizophrenia who's chronically unmedicated and unhoused. And it was very healing to talk to this man. And he's helping families who have somebody suffering from this. And so like, it's just people like that, like all kinds of people. But if I can get something out of it, I sure am. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to take their tools and I pass those on to clients. I'm like, hey, and I'm a person who is fine crediting others. Like I told you the name of that workbook. I'm not trying to make that my own thing. That workbook saved my life. I will tell everybody that till the day I die. But I just pass on like whatever people are teaching me. I'm like, hey, I had this guy on the other day. He told me this. I tried it. It worked. You got to try it. So it's a lot of that. And then I started creating like workbooks and like I think I started with one called Surviving the Shit Show. And it was just like how to build up an inner world so that when the world around you is falling apart, like you can still be okay. Because I was experiencing some real personal stress. As a country, we had experienced some big stress. And I was like, how can I maintain this level of peace when really big stuff is happening that's like normal to feel really stressed about? And so just building up emotional hygiene, things like that, that's a part of that workbook. And then just like a step by step of how to stop overthinking. I made that one. I just make them really affordable and easy. They're instant downloads. And that's kind of the future of what I'm trying to do is just make easy accessible tools like that for people. Because like we don't all resonate with everyone that we hear from. So the people that feel like, oh yeah, I like what this lady's got to say, then cool, get you a tool. But I think I'm a student of life and I'm willing to learn from anyone, and I certainly will buy a tool from anyone too. So that's just kind of what I'm doing, is still finding my ground in terms of like I do public speaking and stuff, but my podcast really is like just part of my passion and my purpose, because I'm just trying to help people find the light within. Like I am a light, but I'm just trying to show them theirs.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that 100%. A lot of times this is somewhat free for therapy for me, being able to tell these stories, because as much as the shit you've been through and I've been through, sometimes I just have guests on and I'm like, how are you even alive right now to be able to sit here and tell this story? And that puts a really big perspective on gratitude and what I need to be thankful for in my life, for the things that I have and get to do, and the life that I've lived so far, and get to tell these stories. Where can people currently connect with you if they want to get in touch?
I'm super active on Instagram at Melissa.Hepner. And in case you can't see, it's Malisa, because my parents thought they were cute. Super active on there. My link tree's there, kind of gives you access to I have an Apple and a Spotify link on my link tree, but my podcast you can find anywhere you listen to podcasts. I've just recently got better about uploading to YouTube as well, so you can find me there. And that's under my Emotionally Unavailable Podcast name. So yeah.
All right, guys. And as usual, all of these will be linked in the show notes when this episode airs or as you're watching this now. Melissa, I always ask every guest this because I love hearing the definition. What is your definition of turning pain into progress?
I would say for me, especially since so much of my pain points were around the fact that I wasn't perfect, learning to see that all of my imperfections are just as much a part of my magic as anything that I could have ever viewed as perfect. And that all of the things I viewed as weaknesses are actually my strengths, and leaning into the fact that every part of me matters. Every part of me deserves to be seen and held and loved equally. And then to get to a place where I found profound gratitude for all of the bad experiences, because I could never have felt this amount of peace if I didn't have that amount of darkness to compare it to. And now I'm just grateful for all of it. And so I think knowing the peace you find on the other side of a healing journey is my purpose. And I am very passionate about sharing that with others.
I love that. And guys, my final thoughts is just this, you're not alone. We all feel some sort of way. We all have issues. We all have problems. Like Melissa said, nobody's perfect. At the end of the day, we just want to be loved. We want to be validated, and we want to be seen. So as you go out your day-to-day, remember, you never, ever know what somebody's been through. So if you see that person that needs help, whether it's holding the door open for them or it's just saying, excuse me, or helping them put groceries in there, whatever you see that you can help, that is not going to be that big of a deal, help them. That could be the difference between them ending their life or deciding to press on. And if you're someone that's struggling with suicidal thoughts, get help. Don't quit. Don't give up. Keep fighting, because your darkest moments will equal your greatest comebacks. This has been another episode of the Battle Harder Podcast. Melissa, thank you so much for this awesome conversation. Guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. The world only revolves on those subscribers, and we need those. So wherever you're listening, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, subscribe to the Battle Harder Podcast. Share it with someone. It's for free. You can get the best advice. You can connect with people like-minded like Melissa and other guests I found on the show. And as I like to leave you guys with the one phrase I always say, remember to always be fit for battle. Thank you.
You've just heard another real comeback story on the Battle Harder podcast, where we turn pain into progress and remind you that rock bottom is just the starting line. If today's message hit home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. You might just change their life. Subscribe, leave a review, and join the mission at battleharder.com. Until next time, stay disciplined, stay dangerous, and keep battling harder.